So TALA is one of the UK's fastest growing fashion brands, and you've been driving its evolution from startup to global player. And you're going to share some of the strategies behind scaling a modern DTC brand now across all channels, communities, and culture. So as CEO, what has been some of the most critical decisions that have helped take TALA from high growth DTC brand to a multi-channel leader?
Ooh, we're doing something. We have to sit farther from each other, maybe. So I guess, from an operational perspective, we started out as a D2C brand, and we were purely D2C for a few years. And that was really our focus. And a lot of people will tell you when you're scaling that you have to remain focused, right? But at a certain point, you also have to diversify. So the decisions in practical terms, we did wholesale first. And we did wholesale first in a digital way. And then we took wholesale and expanded that into physical wholesale. So the decision to go into Selfridges for us about 2 years ago was quite a big deal, because that was physical for the first time. And when you're a digital brand, there's a lot that needs to change. I mean, probably the first 10 times I saw a shopping bag with TALA on it, I was ecstatic. It practically drove me to tears. That's the kind of thing that changes when you go from digital to physical, right? Suddenly you have to exist in the real world in a very different way. And then, of course, once we did physical wholesale, we then switched to our own flagship store. So we opened our first flagship on Carnaby Street in May. We're about to do our second in 2 weeks, which is very exciting. So, in terms of what the decisions were, technically speaking, the decisions were wholesale, physical wholesale, retail wholesale. But I think at the crux of that is really a decision about timing. It's really thinking about where you are channel-wise and when you're ready to expand, and balancing focus with when it's time for expansion. And there's no perfect rules about that, right? You have to think about when you're starting to hit thresholds on existing channels, when you're starting to tap them out or looking at the horizon for that, what your team can handle in terms of operational complexity with going into new channels and things. But ultimately, it's really a decision about timing.
And just talking a little bit about brand identity, that's something that you've always kind of stood out for. How are you maintaining that distinctness as you scale, especially around being in retail?
Yeah, so I think we don't think about scaling brand. Our brand is our brand. We're the same brand that we were on day one. As you get bigger, you can have more expressions of the brand. But ultimately, the core of the brand is the same brand. We're still speaking to the same customer. I get asked about Lululemon a lot lately because obviously they're having a little bit of a difficult time and they trade in the same category as us. First of all, they're still huge, by the way. So the first thing I always say is I'm not weeping for anyone there. They're fine. But I do think what happens, as you get bigger is there's a tendency to try to play to mass market, and you end up really watering down your identity in that process because you think you need to appeal to everyone. And I'm just a believer that at the end of the day, what people attach to is real brand stories and having a real brand point of view. And that even as you scale, you want to hold on to that strong point of view and trust that there are enough people that it will appeal to, or a part of it will appeal to a wider audience. So we think about scale every day in all sorts of ways, but I don't think about scaling our brand.
And you touched on it a little bit before around making sure your team and things are ready for growth. What's your approach in balancing that rapid growth with operational stability, especially in fashion and e-commerce?
Yeah, so I love operations. I think of myself as an operations person. I was a COO before I was a CEO, so I'm definitely an ops girl. My background is in product in particular, so I'm very passionate about the products that we make and how we develop them, what our range is, their quality, and so on. But it extends, of course, to more operational breadth, warehousing, software, property, and so on. Again, I would say, to me, this is really a question of balance. It's slightly different if you're talking about operations in terms of your product itself, in which case I sort of think you cannot obsess too much, especially if you're a challenger brand and it's early stages. You have to stand for your product. And one of the things that we always hear from customers is about our quality and how the longevity and the usefulness and the flatteringness and everything that we really stand for in our products. So that is number one. I don't think you can obsess about that too much. But when it comes to the other side of operational things like software, property, and so on, as I say, I think it's really about balance and managing the skill set of your team. So especially if you're having to work lean, especially if you have to think about cash, you want to be thoughtful about overspending on a very expensive ERP, for example, if that's not something your business needs yet, because not only will it cost you in money, but it'll cost you in time, nor can you be completely left behind. So I always think like our goal at the moment is to take this like great, bright little star of a business that we have and to scale it as much as possible with operational efficiency and with brand consistency. And operational efficiency means we don't overdo it, we don't overspec it, but that we also build enough resilience through the organization that we can scale. So, I make a physical product. As time goes on, the warehouse, the factories that I was able to use early days are going to change into different factories because they don't have the physical capacity to carry us as we get bigger, for example. So we have to be thinking 2 years ahead and testing new supplier partners because they're the ones that we're going to need 2 years from now. So you have to keep thinking about where you're going to go, but don't overspec the ops.
And what role does like customer feedback and data play in shaping that roadmap for you guys?
Yeah, so I would say customer is absolutely everything for us. When you are a founder-led brand, when you're an influencer-led brand, especially for those of you who don't know, our founder is a woman called Grace Beverly, who's an influencer and entrepreneur. TALA started with a deep connection to its customer through her. One of the things I say is Grace is having a two-way conversation with 1 million people every day, which is truly extraordinary, and it is truly a two-way conversation. And so that dynamic was really brought into TALA from its very beginning. So we've got 600,000 plus followers on Instagram, for example. We're speaking to them in a two-way conversation every day. So some of it is sort of qualitative, some of it is quantitative. It depends, especially socials. There's a lot of privacy stuff around it, so it's not as easy to gather data through there. You get a ton of customer data through selling, of course. We sell physical products, so a ton comes just through Shopify. We get it through customer service. We get it now in retail and in wholesale. We do focus groups, we do polls and so on. We are absolutely obsessed with being connected to our customer. I joke that actually one of the best ways to do customer feedback is really just to bump into me in the gym, because I will talk to anyone for hours about TALA, and if I see you in TALA leggings, I'm definitely going to come up to you. Because I just want to know everything, I want to know how they're working for you, what you don't like about them, what you wish we had, and we just brought a bestseller back that we used to have for years, literally because of a young woman I met in the gym who's like, I miss the Zayt, and I was like, I'm doing it. And we brought it back 4 months later. So yeah, we can't talk to people enough, really.
And how are you navigating the mix of all of the channels, like paid performance, like organic social, influencer-led, and like how is that kind of split across for acquisition strategies for you guys?
So we do all three in a big way. Organic's very important to us, influencer's very important to us, and paid is very important to us. If I could, I would do nothing but organic, right? For obvious reasons, it's free. One of my favorite investors always says to me, word of mouth is free. And it's true. So we would love to do nothing but organic. It's a little bit trickier to measure, but I'll come on to that in a minute. Then that sort of middle bucket for us is influencer. In terms of sort of contribution. And then my last priority is paid. I say last priority, I spend a lot of money on it. We have very sophisticated teams doing it. It's my least favorite choice because it's very expensive. And I think it's the hardest way to articulate the brand authentically to the customer. But we do a lot of it, and it's hygiene. But it is expensive, and it's getting more and more expensive. And so organic is ever more important. In terms of how we think about to mix those things, like how much energy we put behind them, it's as much art as it is science, I would say. And that's for various reasons, one of which is, especially if you're socials first, it can be hard for privacy reasons to get access to some of the LTV and customer journey data. So you really have to respond very quickly and in short term to the things that you're doing on organic. For us, because we can drop a collection and have it sell out on the day or have pieces of it sell out very, very quickly, that's basically all organic response, right? Because I don't even have time to run ads on that before we've even dropped the collection. So there's certain activities that we can do, and even within the drop, I can thus see what content is getting a better response and so on. So on organic, you have to be very, very responsive to the moment. Influencer is the trickier one because it can be longer lead. You're investing in it, it's still expensive. We don't do the kind of influencer spending that is really direct affiliate link. It tends to be more top of funnel and more brand value. So it can be harder to attribute. But we believe, it's funny actually, we did a survey about a year ago with our customers and we asked them where they get their fashion influence from. And we put sort of catwalks and celebrities and magazines and influencers on socials and so on. And it was like 95% said that they got it from influencer. And then we validated the question. Our survey company was very, very smart. We validated the question by asking them which influencers they had heard of. And we did the same thing with like which brands that they had heard of and a couple other questions. And they put a fake answer in each of those questions. So they put like a fake influencer in. And our customer, I say, like 99% caught the fake influencer and didn't pick her. So that's how we knew that our customer is very, very tuned in. So you have to find ways in terms of which channel you're picking to get at the answer that isn't necessarily direct response in this day and age because of privacy reasons and just tricky stuff around data.
And what do you think it takes to turn brand affinity into long-term loyalty?
So I think loyalty comes down to quality of product. You know, if they love what they're getting from you, it comes down to quality of experience. How smooth did you make it for them? If they had an issue, how did you respond to it? Were you respectful and kind and all of those things? And it comes down to resonating with the brand story. You know, do they see something in our mission that they really respond to? And do they feel connected to us as a brand for a reason that's beyond just that we shipped them a pair of leggings? But I think all three of them are really important. You can't just connect with a story and give them a poor experience and vice versa.
And just a little bit around back to team and operation side of things. How are you leading your team to stay nimble and creative in a space that is continuously evolving and moving at a super fast rate?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is making sure, the sort of the hygiene aspect of this is making sure that basic needs are met on the team, right? I mean, we're fast moving and it's fashion, so we probably never feel like we have enough people, but we try to always be thoughtful around making sure that we're right sizing our activities to the size of the team and to the skill set and things. I always say people need to know what good looks like and they need to know that it's possible. So every quarter I do a stand-up and I talk about our priorities and I reiterate our long-term priorities so that we're all focused around what we're trying to achieve. But then on top of it, we then divide that into a number of operational projects to ensure that delivering good is really possible for people, because I think that's really important for people to stay nimble and focused. But the last thing is that I'm sort of obsessed with this. I don't know if you guys know the music producer Rick Rubin. He wrote an amazing book on creativity, and at our heart, we're really a creative brand. And one of the things that he wrote in that book is do the work that excites you. And I just believe in that so much. I say it to my team all the time. They probably get tired of hearing it. But I think, at the end of the day, if you have a team doing the work that they're excited about, they're going to do great work. And I think the customer really feels it when we're excited about the work. So as long as they don't totally break something, going back to operational scale, I really just say to them, do what you're excited about, and it's going to be good.
Give them some freedom to be creative.
Yeah.
And last in thought, for the leaders in the room that are kind of chasing scale, like what's one insight that they might not hear often enough but need to?
I think this one probably is like, for me, it would come down to looking inwards. Like, what is your version of scale? What looks good to you? And what is really feasible? As you go to scale, you're going to have a lot of people telling you what you should do, especially if you take outside money. And you'll find that the advice comes in two directions. You'll have people telling you to go faster, and you'll have people telling you to go slower. But I would really recommend that you get that answer by going inwards and asking yourself what you want. You know, I've worked with people who are incredibly ambitious, and even if they break things or what have you, they are just not interested in being in a business that's going to go slowly. And vice versa, I've worked with folks who are much more comfortable with steady, sustainable growth. A friend of mine is the CEO at Qubits, and he always tells a story of how Pret grew 10% every year until one day they were a £1 billion plus business, right? So you can do it both ways. Just find the model that feels most right to you and is most feasible for your industry and the product that you have. And you will know the answer to that best, because everybody who's giving you advice has their own incentives and motivations. You know, there are folks who want you to grow quickly because it actually doesn't matter to them if you go bust. They've written a business model such that, like, they're just picking winners and then they're picking some failures, right? You can't listen to their advice because they're differently motivated than you are. So I would say just pick the right pace for you and your business.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.